Okay, so Sahil, tell me about let's rewind the clock and tell me about the series of moments that led to your trigger moments before starting the RNT journey.
Right. So it's like a bit of a long story. I think I'd always been like a big guy. I think I wrote on my application form, I was like, I always saw myself as the big guy and felt like that was probably what people saw me as when they first kind of saw me or whatever. And so I'd been like trying to lose weight for ages. And I think university was where I really like started to think about that more consistently. And so I downloaded my fitness pal, started going to the gym and all that kind of stuff, but I never really had that like consistency. And then obviously like 2 years ago, COVID happened, lockdown happened, and it kind of gave me the opportunity to step back from everything else and actually focus on the weight loss. Simultaneously, I found RNT, I think through one of your Facebook posts, and I saw the transformations you were doing at the time. And I think the first thing I started doing was actually listening to the podcast. And I started to understand kind of that other people have been through the same thing, that they've been doing similar things. So then over lockdown one, lost about 10 kilos. And I think it was around Aprilish time that I pulled the pin, as you like to say, and decided to sign up for the July intake of 2020. So yeah, just under 2 years ago.
Did you have a specific moment where you're just like, damn, like things need to change?
I think I'd been feeling like that for quite a while. I think, so before I went to uni, I was probably at like 75, 78-ish kilos. And then over the course, so I did medicine 6-year course. I think over the course of the 6 years, I was just putting on weight, would lose like a couple of kilos and then actually put 5 more on, up until the point where I got to like 86, 87 was like my top end, which is like really quite high. I'm not like the tallest guy either. So for me, that's like really quite heavy.
Just give context, do you want to tell the listeners how tall you are?
So I'm like 167 centimeters.
Yeah.
And so like 87 kilos basically definitely puts me in the obese category. But at the time, you know, people convince you that, oh, you're just big boned, or, you know, you're muscly, or, you know, you don't look that big is kind of what some people would say. And you kind of convince yourself that, oh, it's fine. But then it's only now looking back at the pictures to what I look like then to what I look like now. It's like they're two completely different people.
How did you feel about that?
Yeah. I think I was always like almost ashamed of what I looked like. I always had this, like, you know, when you look in the mirror and you're like, you just feel like, yeah, it's like embarrassed, guilty, just like, there's a lot of like lack of self-esteem that comes with it. I think when you're not proud of your own like physical being. But I think with like life, university, like social life, you can easily convince yourself that it's fine and you kind of just brush past it. And it's only when you're in those like moments where you're by yourself or something's not happening, then it hits you and you're like, what am I doing with my life, kind of thing. But then you quickly go back to the cycle of binging, eating, drinking, going round and round and round. And so life just goes on. And it was COVID that like gave me that pause, I think.
When you were in social settings, you said socials kind of just fueled that cycle almost. How did it do it? And how did socials almost keep you away from making that change?
So yeah, like I think, yeah, I got to university, I started to try tracking a little bit, and it was like that classic Monday to Thursday, I was pretty consistent going to the gym or trying to be, you know, healthy. And then Friday, Saturday, you go out, you binge really hard, drinking a lot more alcohol than I should have realistically. And then that comes with eating a lot more, you know, junk food and just living an unhealthy lifestyle. Because, you know, especially at university, you're actually going out Wednesday night and then you're going out Friday night and then you're going out Monday night. And so that cycle is just continuous. And you don't then give yourself that opportunity to think about what you're doing. You're just jumping onto the next thing, jumping onto the next thing. It's that whole instant gratification thing, isn't it? Basically, like you're so quickly looking for that fun element that you forget about the long-term impact of your actions.
And when you were in those moments alone, what was going through your mind? What was some of the self-talk?
I think it's probably something that a lot of people deal with, but it's that negativity. It's that, you're not good enough. You'll never be good enough. What is your worth dictated by how you look? Is your worth dictated by what other people think of you? But ultimately, I guess inside, I probably didn't care enough about myself and my health at that time. And I was just willing to go along with the motions. And I was sacrificing myself because of it almost.
Yeah. You said you were always the big guy growing up, and you said university sort of fueled it and took you to higher and higher body weights. Looking back, do you we talk about like, uncovering the muck and sort of using various vices or crutches to sort of keep things at bay. Have you sort of been able to reflect on what that it was for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's like so much, to be honest, and I think there's still stuff that's coming out. I think seeing food as a source of comfort is definitely one that's pretty high up there for me. I think potentially that, the Asian background, the being the big guy, the fact that food is so easily accessible, it's a commonality that you find everywhere. And so it's so easy to, when you're feeling down or you're feeling stressed or you're feeling bored, to reach for that food that you think is going to make you feel better. I've even like had to deal with it in the last 2 years. Like, yeah, fine, I've lost loads of weight, but we still deal with it regularly. So I'm a doctor. I work quite often in A&E. I have stressful shifts, and at the end of a 12-hour shift, you go to the doctor's lounge and there's biscuits, cakes, crisps, and like, I literally mentioned so Ed's my coach, and I mentioned it to Ed 2 weeks ago that I was in the same environment that I was in 6 months ago, and it was like being triggered by that same thing, and I end up binging at that time. And so it's not just because I've been on with RNT for 2 years, suddenly all my problems are solved, but I'm just way more aware of it. And so I was able to catch it a lot earlier and then deal with it at the time, rather than get into this, cyclical nature of like unhealthy habits.
What do you see when you again? How much weight have you lost now? Your
30 kilos.
Amazing. 30 kilos at 5'7", right? Or 5.
Yeah, 5'6". Yeah,
5'6". That's no mean feat. Honestly, when I saw your parents at your photo shoot show me that picture of you, like honestly, I could not believe that was you. But how do you feel that? Like when you see yourself, like, because identity is a big part of this, in that it's an identity shift when you go through this transformation. And a big part of keeping the weight off is looking in that mirror and now seeing the new Sahil versus still seeing the old Sahil that you're so used to seeing. How have you found that? Because 30 kilos is so much, it is such a massive amount of weight to lose. What are you seeing when you look at yourself in the mirror? Because I think this is where a lot of people struggle with, and not just the mirror, but also like when you're in the pub, when you're at friends' restaurant, or when you're at restaurants and friends, and like all your old behaviors and your old identity doesn't just shed overnight, does it? So talk to us about that change and how you've sort of evolved.
Yeah, so I have like a few things that I've thought about coming into this podcast. And one was, I thought I would lose the weight and my life would change. But actually my life changed, and then I lost the weight, because you need to change the person you are to physically change. You can't do the same things you were doing that made you gain weight and expect to then suddenly become more athletic, stronger in the gym. They're not compatible, because otherwise you would have already been all those things in the first place. And so it is still like an ongoing process and a bit of a battle sometimes, because you do look in the mirror, and I think all of us will notice things that we still want to change about us, or notice things that we could be different, and see ourselves potentially as our old personalities. But I definitely feel more positive about things, and I think again it's about that awareness. It's about understanding who are you as a person, what do you want to achieve, and making sure that your actions are in line with your goals and your priorities.
Yeah. What are some of the battles that you're facing, or you have been facing?
So after my shoot, I've gone into consolidation phase, but I've not really made it easy for myself, because I've been going on quite a few holidays and trips. So straight after my shoot, 2 days afterwards, I went to America for 3 weeks on like a traveling road trip. I then came back for 2 weeks. I then went to Turkey on an all-inclusive 5-star experience to Turkey for a week. I then came back and then had a friend's wedding in Manchester for like a whole weekend. I then came back for a week, and then I just came back from Glastonbury Festival yesterday, which is, if I look a bit tired, that's why, because I've basically not slept for like the whole weekend. So I've gone from having this really stringent and strict routine going into the shoot, the grind, where I'm like eating 1,200 calories a day, going for runs every day, training every other day, 12,000 steps, to the complete opposite, where it's like I've now got this really up and down lifestyle, and I have to still keep my core strategies in place. And so, like, for example, at Glastonbury, it would have been so easy for me to just relapse into like my old drinking culture, right? Because there's so much food there, there's so much alcohol there, there's whatever you want, you could do it if you wanted to. And so I had to really check myself and be like, actually, what is the person I want to be? Who is the person I want to be? And then how can I then, put that into action?
How do you check yourself? Go on.
I think I'm quite a reflective person anyway, but I think it's like just every day, like either in the morning or in the evening, I just take a moment to say, yesterday, what did I do? And am I happy with those decisions? And if not, like, what was the reason behind it? I think a lot of this comes from the ability to, like, checking in with Ed every week. By typing out those emails, you're already starting to think about these things, to a deeper level. And so now that I've taken Ed out of the equation on a daily basis and just trying to do it with myself more often.
Yeah. Because that's the hardest thing to do, is that when life is sweeping you by, is, when do you get that moment to sort of check in? Because if, one day, potentially quote unquote bad, can then turn into 3 days, 7 days, 2 weeks later, you're back to square one, right? It can sweep you by really quickly, and having that moment to sort of consolidate yourself is really critical for that identity creation or evolution.
And I think there's also like a lot of like underlying positive habits that you can like help to come about that awareness. Like, and I think that comes from the fat loss journey, like going for walks. I think having that time by yourself, like even if you're going for a half an hour walk and you're listening to music, your mind will start to think about things just naturally. And so because I've done that consistently for so long, that trait is now becoming more inbuilt in me. Listening to podcasts, I think podcasts and audiobooks are like so underutilized, especially by like my generation, the generation below, because it's that external knowledge that then triggers thought and action thereafter. So I've been listening to like, obviously the RNT podcast I used to listen to loads, and now I've transitioned to other kind of well-being podcasts, and even like just stuff that I wouldn't normally have listened to. And it just gives me the opportunity to pause the podcast and then see how it then, kind of links back to my life and what I've been doing.
Yeah. So if you circle back to mid 2020, when you started this journey, how did you find the initial process? And what were some of the biggest challenges you faced, biggest obstacles you were facing at the beginning, where you were undergoing this entire lifestyle overhaul, so to speak?
So I think my initial 2 weeks were actually really difficult. I think partly because, so I'd already lost like 10 kilos during lockdown. And so I think I came into RNT thinking, well, I've already done a bit of this, so I kind of maybe know what I'm doing. But obviously lockdown was a special period, right? I wasn't going out and seeing friends. I was literally just working, coming home. And so to then apply the same things to normal life, where you have social events and you have the pressures of kind of external people on their expectations of you, et cetera, I think that's where I kind of understood, or had to then understand, where RNT is coming from. So obviously for the first 2 weeks, it's quite strict. You have to eat the same food every day. You have to, really commit to the plan. And I think at that time, I remember telling Ed, I was like, I don't really want to do this. I want to go drink a glass of wine now. I want to go eat this. And he was basically like, just do it. Don't question it and just do it. And I think that faith in the process was something that took a bit more time than I expected to kind of like happen. And once it did, that was when the progress really started to come.
What was your aha moment?
I think it took about 6 weeks. And then I think it was just like, I don't even remember what the exact moment was. I think it was just like, when you see a bit of weight loss and it starts happening, and then you're like,
momentum.
This is working
Yeah.
now. This is working. Yeah.
Yeah. And then as you started getting into it, what were some of the biggest problems and challenges you faced and obstacles along the journey? Because life gets in the way, things happen. What were some of the things that you faced and that you had to overcome that the listeners would find a lot of value from?
So yeah, obviously, like, my journey has been quite long. I think a lot longer than maybe some other ones. And I think I had a few like ups and downs with it. So I think from July when I started till about the February afterwards, so February 21, I was quite good, quite consistent, making progress. Obviously, we had like a second lockdown in between that, which I think did help in a sense because I got back into that really strict routine, no external kind of things to deal with. And then February, March, things started to open up again. And I think that was when things were like opening up more kind of like back to normal. And I think that was really difficult because my priorities probably shifted slightly in terms of I wanted to make up for lost time in terms of like socializing and experiencing things. And I didn't want to be so strict with my nutrition, for example, because I wanted to go enjoy the restaurant meal or go on holiday or do whatever. And I think it got to the point where maybe for a couple of months I was spinning my wheels, where my weight did kind of stay stagnant. And then it was in July 21 that Ed and I made the decision to just pause for a little while and consolidate, because trying to be in a deficit but not achieving it is almost more negative than trying in the first place. It's better to just like take a step back, maintain for a bit, and then come back into it. So then August 21 to September, October time, I was like in this kind of maintenance period and working out what I wanted to do. And I think there was always a part of me that wanted to do the shoot. There was always a part of me, because I think going back to when I first joined, I'd listened to these podcasts, hearing other people talk about their shoots. I can still remember like 3 or 4 podcasts that really stuck in my mind. One of them was Amit Lakhani.
Yeah.
And I still listen to that like every so often when I'm feeling a bit lost, because it just said stuff that really related to where I was at the time. And I remember in that kind of period thinking, I wanted to achieve this goal and I haven't done it yet. And I started to question, why haven't I done it yet? Am I being lazy? Am I giving up too early? Am I becoming that person where I don't believe in myself again? And in September, I then said to Ed, look, I want to do the shoot. Like, let's just do it. I'm not going to be scared. I'm not going to be, coy about this. I'm going to go all in. So I went on holiday for a week to Greece, and Ed was like, don't go away and, sack it all off because, you're going to come back into shoot prep. He was like, go away, be consistent, and then come back, and then we go hard. So then from September to December, I went into shoot prep, and well, the shoot was meant to be like middle of December, but unfortunately my grandma passed away in November. So things changed again, because I was literally 2.5 weeks out from my shoot, and I had to fly off to Kenya for 6 weeks. And so again, I had to then deal with, how do you deal with loss when you're, 2.5 weeks before a shoot, you're emotionally, physiologically quite drained already because of the activity you're doing, because of how little you're eating. To then deal with the loss of a loved one, it's just like a whole massive battle in itself. And then going to somewhere like Kenya, where I don't know, people who listen to this and know about Kenya know that the food there is not really the healthiest. And also food is pretty much the only entertainment source you can really get out there, right, in terms of a social setting. So it's like you literally spend the whole day indoors, and then you'll go out for a meal, and that meal probably won't be that healthy. And so you're then battling with, what do I do in this situation? The emotion is driving so many of your decisions, and it was just a really difficult time. And so I did end up putting a bit of weight on whilst I was out there, but it was just one of those things where you have to learn from it once you come back, I guess. But came back, got straight back into shoot prep, and I think I'd almost learned so much from the first time around that the second time around I was just like completely dialed in. Obviously had struggles where I had a couple of holidays or like weekends away with friends and dealing with social situations. But I think the best thing I did was, so my shoot was beginning of April, and from March onwards, I just didn't go out. I just said, I'm going to sacrifice 6 weeks of socializing for this one goal. And it was probably the best thing I could ever do, because at the time, maybe some of my friends thought I'd gone underground. Maybe my family members were a bit worried about me, whatever. But the shoot speaks for itself, in my opinion. Like, it is the greatest thing I've ever done. I don't think I could ever be more proud of myself. I was basically really in tears on that day. You have the video where Shah takes the first photo of me and shows it to me, and I could have broken down. I think I to see that photo is just like,
I'm feeling emotional thinking about it. Yeah.
I still like relive that moment daily almost, and it was the culmination of so much time and effort and just work to then be like captured in that 1 or 2 hours that we did the shoot. Is just incredible.
Well, I'm excited to put together, the videographer is going to put together a cool little documentary for you, with your parents involved, your shoot. I've also got that little snippet I probably need to send you. So, if you're listening to this podcast, you'll be able to watch all of that you can click on the show notes. You'll be able to see the case study and the video. So I was fortunate enough to share the shoot moment with you. You came in incredible shape. And one thing that really startled me, and I was saying this to Shah as well, is that for someone who's lost 30 kilos, you had no like loose skin or very little. You looked at you and you thought, there's no way he could have been 30 kilos heavier. Like, there's just no way. And he built a lot of muscle as well. Like you came, you stripped down the body fat, and it wasn't just that you were skinny. You actually had a physique as well. You've got a physique, which is a testament to your training and your work ethic as well. Because very few people can diet down and have a physique to show for themselves, because that actually takes the hard work of training hard. So that's something you should be proud of. And you brought in a level of condition that was very, very impressive. So what was going through your mind that time? What was in your mind when you saw that first photo, when you saw like what you saw?
I think it was just, so I think it's really interesting because a lot of people, when they talk about a shoot, they think there's a whole gold medal syndrome about it, you pin too much on that day. And then the day after you're like, well, what do I do now? And actually, I'm really proud of the fact that I've taken so much time appreciating the process. That even though that day was incredible, it's not like I haven't even requested my edited photos from Shah yet. Even though
he's told me. Yeah.
Because I do look at the photos sometimes, but it was more the experience of it that was that meant so much to me.
I've not requested my pictures from him either. It's not about the photo, right? When you come out the other side, you actually you just enjoy the process of it.
And I think it was like the Tuesday before when I started carb loading back up, and I think I came downstairs. It was in the evening, and my back was popping. And it's the first time I've ever seen myself like that. And I just came down to the living room here, and my parents are here, my girlfriend is here, my brother was here, and I just started doing this to because I was just so this is it, this is where this is what it's about. And it was just pride in that sense of achievement more than anything else.
Amazing. When you're going through the grind, what were some of the things that you noticed by yourself, you learn about yourself?
I just have something really funny about the grind. So for anyone who's been through a shoot, they'll definitely understand this. And for anyone who hasn't done a shoot, if you're listening to this right now, I would just say book one in. Even if you're 50, 60, your dad, his achievement is just one of the most incredible things. And it just goes to show that anyone can do it. And I'm sure he will also agree that doing a shoot, it will just change your entire appreciation of life.
Yeah.
There was a moment where so you're doing I was doing 12 to 15,000 steps a day at one point. And I was out for a walk, and obviously you have a pavement and you have a grassy verge. And for that entire hour, there's a little voice in the back of my head that was just saying, that grass is really comfortable. Why don't you just sit down? So I just take a nap on the grass. Imagine you're on a main road and you just lie down on the grass. It's not normal to think these things. And that little voice in your head that's saying, eat that food or just go to sleep, take a nap. To have to then deal with that, I think it was just, in hindsight, it's hilarious. But at the time, that was my reality. And it's what probably you were going through at the time, because you were insanely shredded. So your voice must have been even louder realistically, because that's what happens when you go that low.
Start place.
But it's funny in hindsight, but at the time it was really difficult.
Yeah.
And I think, again, it was that questioning, why am I doing this? What is this all for? Is this gonna be what I want it to be? But I think because it had taken so long to get there, I really had that resolve. I was like, nah, this is it. Like, I don't think I ever really questioned, like, I don't think I ever deeply questioned my like commitment to the process by that point. I think I was fully in it.
So when the devil on the shoulder was saying, why are you doing this, Sahil? What were you saying back to it?
So I think, again, because of how much time I put into this, my why has become really deep, in terms of, so initially I just didn't want to be fat. Like I that was my first why, but the why behind the why has been developed over a long time. So obviously as a medic, I've spent a lot of time seeing sick people, seeing unwell people. I spent 6 months in A&E. I worked on COVID wards. I've worked with elderly people quite a lot, doing a lot of end of life stuff as well. It's made me question, you know, why do we do these things? What is the purpose of life? All this kind of stuff. And I think for elderly people, so I want to live to a really high age. I want to live till I'm really old and be really fit and live a really long life. And with elderly people, the two worst things I see are dementia and falling. I don't know if it's a statistic that people know very well, but if you fall over above the age of like 80 or 85, the chance of you passing away the year afterwards is 50%.
Oh.
So you really don't want to fall over once you get old. Like, it's something that's really underestimated. But the only three things that will prevent you from falling are muscle mass, balance, and then bone density. What three things, what will help those three things is basically muscle training or strength training with a bit of cardiovascular ability behind it. Like that's what's going to keep you from falling when you're that old. And if you don't fall, you're less likely to die. It's the truth. And then the other side is dementia, because losing your cognition is one of the saddest things for not only yourself, but for the people around you. People, when they think about dementia, they think of Alzheimer's disease, which is really common, but actually one of the biggest causes of dementia, is vascular problems. So the same thing that causes a heart attack or causes a stroke will also cause dementia. So, obviously don't smoke is a really big one. But apart from that, it's like, don't get diabetes and don't have high blood pressure and try and be a bit fit. What's going to help that? Well, going to the gym and eating well. Like, it's pretty basic when you think about it, but unfortunately it's stuff that we don't like to think about because it's so easy and within our control. We don't want to do it. We want to go, take medication that will make us feel better. What's the easy way out? That's not going to help us in the long term. And that is my why. Like, that is my real underlying why. Every time I don't want to go to the gym, I then think to myself, well, if I don't go to the gym today, I'm not helping myself in 60 years time.
How do you tune into that though? Because thinking 60 years ahead is sometimes tough when you're in the day-to-day of like, I'm doing these things. So, if I fall when I'm 85, I've got a better chance of recovering. That's a very hard connection to make. How do you tune into that on a day-to-day basis? And have you crystallized that as the core why, or do you think there's something else beneath that as well?
I think on a day-to-day basis, I don't think I probably think about it on a day-to-day. I think it's maybe like week to week. I do journal again, which is something that's come out of the RNT journey. I never used to journal before, but I think, again, journaling, it helps with that self-reflective practice. I think my job really helps me with it, because every time I go to work and in A&E, at least one patient a shift will be an elderly person that's fallen over or an elderly person that's got dementia. And so it's like that immediate connection is just,
I was going to say, you must be seeing it daily without even realizing it, right? And
and then, so one of my grandmas, like I said, she passed away in November. The other one passed away during the first lockdown of COVID. And so those two losses have really underpinned things for me over the last 2 years. So whenever I feel a bit lost, these thoughts just tend to come back to me. And I think also the brain is really predictable, that the more you think about something, the easier it is to think about it again and again and again. It becomes habitual.
Definitely.
So now it's like a trigger reflex. If I don't want to go to the gym, I think about these things. And the more I do it, the more it kind of happens again and again and again.
Yeah. When you when your grandma passed away at the end of 2021, you said it was very difficult to deal with loss and also deal with the identity shift that you're going through. How did you manage that? Because in the past you said you used food as a comfort. What was the sort of what was the battle in your mind at this time?
so there's like a few things I was thinking. I think one, I was like, I wanted to be there for my family. But I think I remember thinking that just because I'm there for my family doesn't mean I can't be there for myself. Again, it's something that I've heard on the RNT podcast. It's the whole analogy of, well, you know, if you're on a plane and the oxygen goes, you have to put your own mask on first. And I definitely believe in that as a rule for life. You should always prioritize yourself first before like thinking about other people, because if you can't look after yourself, you can't look after other people. So like one thing that I've never done, I've been to Kenya more times than I can count. I used to go every year. And this is the first time I've been to the gym there. Like my brother and I were going to the gym every day. We took our protein shake with us. My brother was taking fuel. We had our protein bars. So we were doing what we could with the, you know, with the cards that we were dealt. We were trying to make the most of the situation, essentially. And I think just by going to the gym, it allows you that time to de-stress and deal with whatever's going on. So I think that was probably one of the biggest things that was helpful. And at the time, I don't think that I realized it. It's only thinking about it now that I appreciate how much it probably helped.
Yeah, yeah. How's your transformation impacted your inner circle and your family?
Game changer. My life, like my family life is completely turned around. So my brother, he's lost about 50 kilos, which is just incredible. He's doing really well. He's been like losing weight on and off for a long time, but he's now kind of really doing it consistently. I think it was again around after first lockdown. So I hadn't been home for the whole time because I was working in Southampton, but now I'm back in London. So I hadn't been home for 4 months. I came home after first lockdown, and I think he saw me, and it probably did trigger in his mind like, oh damn, like Sahil's lost like 15 kilos. You know, maybe I should do something. And it's not something that we spoke about at the time. But then I remember going away and coming back, and he'd started to lose weight. And suddenly it was this constant conversation. Like whenever we're at home, we're just constantly talking about health, fitness, nutrition, training. He listens to so many podcasts, and he's listened to all your stuff. He's read your art, you know, Sham's transformation case study. I think he's read it about 1 million times. He knows it word for word. Like wow. He takes the information from there, and he's so good at applying it to himself.
You said he's done this all himself, right?
Yeah, he's done it all himself. Yeah, he's read your book, and he will read your book, and he will question it. He will then implement it, and then reflect on. And he's basically like, Akash knows what he's talking about. Is always, but he goes into it with such curiosity. He goes into it with such curiosity, which I really admire, and I think that's been amazing.
Incredible.
And so we've both been doing this for a while, and then I think after my shoot, my parents met your parents, and I think that was my dad was really inspired. They then went on holiday, and something just clicked in their mind, and they've come back, and my parents have been gymming consistently for 7 weeks.
Wow.
My parents are both now like tracking their calories and like eating a lot healthier. My dad's now lost, I would say, about 7 kilos. My mum is more like maintaining / recomping, but it's not about the weight at the moment. It's more about that healthier lifestyle and just like that slowly increasing you know, their understanding of kind of what they're doing. My mum will make Indian food, and she will track it all on MyFitnessPal, and then have the macros per 100 grams. I don't know any,
it's unheard of.
Like, I just don't know any Indian family that could ever do that. It means that me and my brother can now eat the food that she's cooking because we know what's going into it. And it's like little things like reducing oil content, reducing sugar content, like making these little changes actually have a massive impact long term, but it's about those marginal gains. So yeah, it's had a massive impact on my family. Our life at home is completely different now, but it's really positive. And yeah, I think that is also part of my why. It was being able to inspire the people around me. I've had already so many people message me to say, how did you do it? Can you give me a plan? Can you do this? 2 of my close family friends signed up to RNT's intake yesterday.
Oh, amazing.
And I have like one of my housemates. So one of my housemates is like wants to sign up for next one. I don't think you have to do it by RNT, and I think you would agree the same thing. I think RNT do provide like, but RNT do provide the best
transformation blueprint. You know where to come.
Exactly. And I do, you know, sell you guys every single opportunity I do, but I think the underlying thing is just creating that health and creating that understanding of how to live a better lifestyle.
Amazing. That's incredible. And so tell me, how's the physical being the vehicle for you?
I think confidence is just the number one thing. I think it's just changed the way I present myself, the way I look at myself. I think, for example, like from a work perspective, so I finished like formal training last year in August, and I've taken some time off this year to kind of do my own thing. I've then come back and started working at a few different hospitals. It's the first time I've had to go into like a different place of work, work with a completely new team. And I now go in with so much more confidence because I really like have that belief in myself. If I can do the shoot, do the grind, lose all this weight, then I can go into any fire and help whatever I need to do. And then from a relationship perspective, I think it's just changed everything for me. When I was big, I don't think people were that interested in me, unfortunately, but maybe it was also a confidence thing because I didn't believe in myself. And then I lost weight and suddenly, you know, my life has just changed completely. I went from being single and lost to being single and dating to now being in a really like committed relationship in the space of 2 years. And I do think that losing the weight was like a really key factor in that. I mean, so my girlfriend Sona, she literally came to the shoot with me and we'd only been going out for like 4 months. I think that says something in itself, to be honest, like how much of an impact, how important it was to me and therefore how important it was to her, for her to come and be there.
You know, she's a keeper. If you started dating her in the middle of at the start of the grind,
yeah.
she put up with you there, she'll put up with you anything.
That's literally, I tell it all the time. I'm like, we were literally like not going out. We weren't like, you know, normally when you're dating, you want to go do loads of extravagant things, especially at the start of a relationship. And I was like, well, we can maybe go to Nando's once every 2 weeks, if that. And then apart from that, you basically have to just like eat the food I'm eating or do your own thing because otherwise, you know, we can't do this.
Good filter.
Yeah, it worked out really well, but yeah, it's just changed everything. And I think so, like going forward, I think I'm now like starting to focus a little bit more on my career, trying to work out what I want to do going forward. And I don't think I would have taken that time to really assess my options if it wasn't for the journey. I don't think I would have taken the time to you know, like by losing this weight, I've now realized that the world is my oyster. I can do what I want. I don't have to stay in my lane. I don't have to be the same person I've always been. But that's not just when it comes to my physique. That comes to my career, my relationships, what I want to do with my life. But it's only through losing the weight have I made that realization and believed in it, I think, is the real key part.
What's some of the biggest decisions you made since you've transformed?
Biggest decisions, I think the work one is probably the biggest one. So, you know, right now I'm looking at kind of transitioning out of medicine potentially for a little while, going to explore some like kind of more corporate or kind of consulting avenues. I think that's probably quite a big decision to not formally go into training and just follow that pathway. I think that's probably been one of the biggest ones. I'd say that's probably the biggest one, actually. Yeah. Apart from that, I think I'm right now, it's just like dealing with all the holidays that are coming back to back and just kind of making sure I'm enjoying things, but not overindulging and staying true to myself at the same time.
How have you found consolidation investment so far?
It's been tough. It's been tough because you have to slightly let go of that shoot physique to an extent as well. Like you can't hold that position forever, or if you do, you have to sacrifice quite a lot. And I think it's now that like kind of long-term mentality of where do I want to be going forward, and you know, like if I go away and put on a bit of weight, how does that make me feel? How does that make me? It's the look, feel, perform zone that you're talking about. It's like trying to identify where do I want to sit like long term. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy because you do go away and you kind of get lost in that moment. Like for example, in Turkey, when I was on that all-inclusive holiday, there was probably a day or so when I was kind of maybe let go. But I think it's like not having that negativity about it, but also realizing, okay, this is where I'm at. Do I want to keep doing this? No. Okay, how do I resolve the situation? And just looking forwards.
Yeah. Trying to find that sweet spot of feel, looking for your best is like, it's really difficult because you're going to mess up a few times, and it's just being okay with the fact that if you mess up one day, you just got to get back on it the next day. Just got to make sure one day doesn't turn into a month, right? Yeah.
I think that's the main thing, is just catching yourself as early as possible, because it's easy. Like I spoke to you and I spoke to Minil. I saw Minil actually like the 2 days after I came back from America,
Okay.
We went to these like the vegan London nights. It's like a vegan food market in London. And I just bumped into there. And he literally asked me the same thing. He was like, how was consolidation? I was like, it's been okay. But I mean, America is like obesity central. Sorry to any USA listeners out there, but it's pretty bad. It can be pretty bad. There's a lot of like, you were spending time
in US straight away as well.
Yeah. And so you're literally surrounded by this indulgent food. You're in maybe a bit of a holiday mindset, and it's so easy to just like go overboard, especially when you've got, so you're hungry from like you're actually hungry, but then you've got this like kind of psychological hunger because you've been like restricted for so long. And so it's just making sure you realize that actually you don't want to eat. You just feel like eating and stopping yourself. But yeah, I saw him at that Thursday night, and he was like, basically when after one of his shoots, he literally came to that food market like the day after, and he like ate loads of food, and he was like, it's one of these things that I think a lot of people go through, but it's about catching yourself, realizing what you've done, and then like just coming back from it.
First time's always the hardest.
I think
so.
What
was that?
No, I was going to say the first time's the hardest, and I'm already looking towards my next shoot. So
bring an improved physique the next time. What almost kept you, if you think back 2 years, what almost kept you from joining?
So this is a question I've been thinking about a lot. I think because it took me a lot of time to actually sign up in the first place. Because I started listening to the podcast in like Jan, and it wasn't until April. And I was wondering, because I think there was even a couple of times where I nearly like pressed the button to like sign, and I was like, oh, let me wait. I think one is the money. I think especially, an Asian background potentially doesn't help this, but the kind of, should you be spending that money on yourself? Is it worth it? Can you put that money and save it and, buy a house or whatever, save it towards your wedding? It's kind of these things that are maybe they're not spoken about. It's almost ingrained in you from a young age, save money. And don't spend it on yourself. And I think putting that money down was like, I'm investing in my future is how I had to then realize kind of that was the reason behind it. I'm so comfortable in spending money in other situations, but when it came to my fitness and my health, I was suddenly very reluctant, which I think again was a key sign of my priorities at the time. So I think that was definitely one, but I think that was then also coupled with that stigma. It's like, you can't do it by yourself. You're struggling that hard that you can't. Losing weight is easy. You should be able to do it by yourself, kind of thing. I feel like there was a bit of a stigma about it. Like, you need a coach. And the coach is online. Like, what do you even do? And why are you spending so much money if they're only going to be online? These were the questions that I got at the beginning, but then also afterwards when things started opening up and people started finding out about what I was doing. People didn't quite understand what the point of it was. And I think, again, when it comes to this kind of thing, it's really easy to like want to spread your bets. So it's a bit like doing the 7 different types of diets. I want to do keto this week. I'll do 5T next week. I'll intermittent fast the week after. And the difficulty for me was like saying, right, I'm going to put all my eggs into one basket. I'm going to go all in on one thing and just believe in it. And I've literally got like a notes thing, which has my RNT Analogies. I don't know if you can see RNT Analogies.
Go for it.
And the first one is putting your eggs in one basket, but you got to secure the basket. So you got to make sure that basket is the basket. And I think I spent enough time doing my research for RNT, doing the podcast, understanding your background and also your team's background, that I then was like, well, if I'm going to go all in on something, I'm going to pick RNT. And I paid off, right? Like where I'm at now, I wouldn't be here without you guys. That's the truth. I don't think I would have been able to I would have probably lost some weight, but I probably would have put it back on if I hadn't signed up for RNT. And I definitely wouldn't have got to a shoot condition. I definitely wouldn't have made the lifestyle changes I would have made without you guys. Like that's the truth. So I think when it comes to this kind of thing, if you truly want to lose weight, you've got to pick RNT, but then you've got to say, well, I'm picking you, I'm putting all the money into you, but then I'm going to go and do it. Because if you don't, then you're wasting your time. But you're wasting your time with everything at that point.
What else is on that analogy list?
I said, okay, so I think the other thing that was probably stopping me was like the whole, the what I call the YOLO brigade. So it's like the you only live once, treat yourself, don't cheat yourself, or kind of all this kind of stuff,
yeah.
right? Like I definitely was living in that mentality for quite a long time, and people around me probably were as well. It's like, oh, go to the gym, but don't sacrifice, your big night out just because you want to go to the gym, or that kind of mentality. And I think that was like, again, something that I had to learn over time, that actually the you only live once mentality is pretty negative. It's the delayed gratification in life that really leads to true success. It's when you're willing to say, I'm going to do something now that won't pay off for today, it won't pay off for tomorrow, but it will pay off in 6 months' time. Because then in 6 months' time, that feeling of achievement is way bigger than you sacking off today. But it is really difficult, and it's something that I still struggle with. I still have a pizza every so often. I still have a biscuit. Like, I'm not perfect. Don't think anyone's perfect, but as long as you're still aware of it, I think that's the main thing.
Love it.
I've got another one if you want.
Go for it. Yeah, the floor is yours.
So the other one is, success is the process and not the event. And I remember, I think I spoke to you about this when I had my first consolidation bit, when I tried to work out what I was doing with my life, basically. You can never have success. You can't own success. You can only be successful. It's a state of being, right? But it means you've got to consistently and keep doing it. And I think that's something I've learned from RNT as well. It's like, fine, anyone can go and lose loads of weight, but keep those habits and keep that lifestyle and still be that person moving forwards. That is true success. That is what it means to be successful.
Success is what I've learned is success is a feeling, and it's something that you can actually create for yourself every day. And you've got to create a state of success. You've got to allow yourself to have a state of success every single day, and you've got to know what that is for you. And when you actually boil it down and you think about what actually success is, for most of us, it's the simple things in life, right? So I know for me, like a successful day is one where I've had a really good training session. I've had I've had quality time with my wife, and I've created something really cool in the business. Like those are the three things. That I love creativity, I love quality time with my wife, and I love training. If I do those three things each day, I'm having a successful life. And I think anyone listening, like what you said there is so spot on, because those sort of events aren't going to be the things that define your success. It's the day-to-day activities that you just got to love.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of that. I think for me, it's the same thing as well. It's so interesting that I think a lot of us on the process will have similar things that we really appreciate. Like for me, my runs, like I try to run 2 to 3 times a week, and every time I go for that run, the first step I take I have the same route. I pretty much do it as well, and it's like that rhythmic feeling of it. As soon as I'm running down that first hill, I'm like, this is it. This is successful for me. Like I don't care what the time is. I don't care what the weather is. As long as I complete that run, I feel like I've that for me means way more than some big achievement or certificate or medal or anything like that. So yeah, I completely agree with that.
Amazing. Tell me what else.
Yeah, so I think something else I wanted to touch on coming into the podcast was like body dysmorphia. So I don't know. I think anyone who's big will probably have like an element of this, where I think it's you guys actually did a post about this really yesterday, wasn't it? Body positivity. Oh
yeah, you can be healthy. You can be happy at any size, but you can't be healthy at any size.
Yeah,
that was something Ivan said to me in passing. He came to Bali when I was there. He said that to me in passing. I was like, oh, that's a really good saying. So I've got to use that for RNT.
Again, it's such a coincidence because it's something that I was thinking about coming into this. Because obviously, when I was big, like there was like I wasn't really happy with how I looked, but there was a lot of like, oh, you look fine or whatever. And then as I've lost the weight, I'm obviously way happier with how I look, but there's still elements that I dislike or things that I would like to improve. And I think it's a really fine line between wanting to improve and going to that negativity of not being happy or not being content with how you look. I think that's something that's like really difficult. But I think the aspect I wanted to talk about more was people, when they heard I was going through this process, were worried. They were like, oh, but you look fine now. Why do you want to keep losing weight? So after I'd lost the first kind of 10, 15 kilos, my mum was like, oh, maybe you could stop now. And I don't think she really understood kind of what I was doing. And she was worried about me. And it came from a place of, of love and kindness and wanting the best for me, but she didn't really get why I was doing it. And there were a few moments where she was like, oh, just eat this food or just eat a bit more, or, don't go to the gym today. And that wasn't just from her. I remember it from her because she's my mum, but it was from like my friends and a few other people as well. It's like, why are you doing this? What's the point in it? And there maybe was an element of, you look good enough now. You look good enough. So is there an element of this that's negative, or what I wanted to say is I really still believe that our bodies are our best representations of ourselves. If you could, the whole "my body is a temple," I think that's funny, but I think it's also true. If you can show that respect to yourselves, if you can show that restraint and look after how you look, and I think that's a really good way to portray yourself. Because if you can respect yourself to that high standard, think about how you're going to then respect the people around you. And I think some people will hear that and say, well, you're putting too much onus on the physical, you're taking too much onus on the physical attributes, but it's not about the physical, it's about what goes into making the physical. Ultimately, you can look at between 56 and 61 kilos. I don't think I look that different under a t-shirt. No one can really tell, but I obviously know. But for me to maintain that kind of range, what it takes to get there is that respect I'm showing myself. And that's what people will see, is that underlyingly people will realize, well, if he looks in good shape, he's probably doing the things that he needs to do to stay in shape. And it's kind of this subliminal messaging that comes across. I think that's the truth anyway, because I definitely now, when I go out and I see someone who's in good shape, I can kind of put two and two together. And I think people genuinely do that.
Your body is a representation of your mind. And how you do one thing is how you do everything. If you treat your body with no respect, what else do you treat with no respect?
I think so. And
I'm totally with you on this whole thing. Yeah.
I think it's something that's probably like a really difficult pill it probably was a really difficult pill for me to swallow back in the day, because I think to invest in a weight loss transformation, you first have to accept that you're not in the place you want to be. But it takes quite a lot of guts to say that. And I think, you have to be really willing to like look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm not happy right now, but I will be happy in a year's time, 2 years time, 5 years time, however long it takes. I'm going to put the work in to get to a place where I'm much happier. I wish I could go back to tell my 16-year-old self that, it's going to be okay. But I can't do that. So I can only do what I can now to make my future better. And so, I think it's just one of those things.
Yeah, that's powerful. I think what you said is very, very powerful, because ultimately, if you uncontrollably gain a lot of weight, there is an element of self-abuse happening. But it's just like you said, it's a difficult pill to swallow and accept that. And unfortunately, society is now like, there's this, there's always a confusion around like what's the right thing to say about this, right? It's like, can you say, you're abusing yourself because you've gone too big? And I think it's the other way as well, right? There's also an element of abuse if you try and stay like shredded all the time, or you try and go, the other way, like getting underweight. That's also an issue, and that's why I talk about the sweet spot, because it's a reflection of all your behaviors and your actions and your systems and your structures in your day, and how you treat yourself and how you view yourself and how you view the world, right? So I think that's very powerful.
Yeah, I think you're completely right in that we live in a world where like we're very like happy to just encourage people to stay the same, because everyone likes consistency. No one likes change, but sometimes change is what you need in life, and you got to just be willing to take that first step.
The first step's the hardest step. But once you take that step, you build momentum, everything changes, right?
Yeah, and then the possibilities are endless. Like I did not think that I would do a shoot, but I also did not think that having done one shoot, I would want to like start planning my next one. Like I already think that. So I'm 27 and I want to do a shoot when I'm 30. I want to do like, because it's 3 years till 30, and I want to do. I already think I want to do a shoot then. Like, but I never thought.
I did one at 27 and one at 30. Did a couple before, but the 20, I did. Yeah. For me, it was like, I'm going to do it before my 30th as well.
Yeah. I just feel like, and I'm like, and I think that's also starting to fuel how hard I push in the gym. I think I gym for the sake of gymming. I think it's just an incredible like thing for your mind. and the muscle gain or the physique kind of change because of it is a bonus for me. Like if I went to the gym and I didn't put any muscle on, I would still go to the gym. Like I don't think
that's why you've got a good physique.
Yeah, maybe.
Honestly, that's the reason why, because you don't care. You're not doing it as a means to an end. You're not doing it as I've got to go to the gym to lose some weight. You're doing it because you love training. Because you love training, you train harder. Because you train hard, you build muscle. It's just how it goes, isn't it? Like I'd train if I never set a PR again in my life, because I love that feeling of just, I call it the void, right? I love that feeling where everything's just still and blank, and it's just you and your body, right? And you and your mind, and you and your thoughts. And I train just for that feeling. And then obviously the bonus is like trying to set PRs and like, all the fun stuff that comes with it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's just like, again, it's like being comfortable, because when you're in the gym, even though you're surrounded by people, you are pretty much alone. Like I train with headphones in, I'm doing my own thing. I rarely train with other people. I would like to, but I think just things don't really line up. Yeah. But even if you're training with other people, when you're in that set for that 45 seconds, you are completely alone, and being able to just zone in on that feeling and build on that time and time and time again, it's just something that I think it just changes the game mentally for you.
Totally. Like me and Sham train every Friday. We do legs together most Fridays if we can make it together. We often say we end up spending like 2 hours in the gym, right? Just because at the end of the week, got nothing else to do, and it's a catch up as well. And we get to the end of the gym, we're like, end of the session, we're like, blimey, we went hard, but because we were chatting in between the sets, we didn't even realize it. We'll have a chat, and the next thing we're like, all right, we're gonna just see you in a minute. Yeah, I'm just gonna go into the zone. You come out of it, and you're like, whoa, and then you just carry on again. And again, like you said, it's when you're training with someone else, it's that set, it's just you. And it's one of the things I live for.
Yeah, so definitely. And I personally also get that buzz from running. Actually, I want to touch on running because I used to hate running. I used to hate it. And it's because I was running with a 30 kilo on my back. You picked up 30 kilos. 30 kilos, it's not light. If you've got a 30 kilo backpack on and you try to go for a run, it's pretty difficult. So I used to hate running, but I would never run outside because I was really conscious. I was really conscious that someone would see a fat guy running and either laugh at me or think like, what am I doing? Why am I wasting my time? Blah, 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 blah. And it was only, so again, lockdown happened. So couldn't go to the gym. And Ed was like, well, you've been running, so why don't you go for a run outside? And I was like, I'm not sure. And he was like, why don't you just try it? Like, what's the worst that can happen? Went for my first run, ended up running a 10K. So to go from never run outside before to running 10K on my first run, I then thought to myself, I was like, oh, maybe this is something I can start to do. I ended up running 3 weeks before the shoot. I ran an 18K, which is the longest distance I've ever run.
Wow.
And I'm now signed up for a half marathon in October.
Wow.
But I never would have done that if it wasn't for the weight loss. Like, that's the truth of it. So losing weight makes life a lot easier. The way I walk, the way I stand, the way clothes fit me is so much nicer. Again, for any big people out there, you will definitely get this feeling where you go to a shop and you try on a bunch of clothes and none of them fit, and you leave that shop feeling so disheartened because you low-key know it's because you're fat, that nothing fits very well, everything's a bit tight, you're constantly having to do this. If you're on the video, you can see this, but it's when you're like pulling your shirt to like stop it from sticking to your skin. You're constantly doing those things. And it gets to the point where you don't want to buy new clothes anymore because you know nothing's going to fit you that well, and you're still going to look not great, probably in most things. To then go to my first kind of shopping experience where I'm like, feel like I'm very proud of the way I look, and everything fits, everything looks nice, and I have the luxury of choosing what I get to wear rather than having to wear something because it looks good on me. These are things that I never thought were possible. And they sound so, like, if there's someone who's never experienced it, they probably sound like completely bizarre and like, what is this guy talking about? But it can change your life. It has changed my life.
Amazing. Do you have any more analogies you want to share with the listeners before I ask my final?
Yes, one last one. I think it's best to last. So, go for it. So I have got like this analogy, and it's basically like we're all like websites basically, or we're all like programs. You know, we're going around living our lives, and we've been designed by our experiences, by our underlying genetics, all come together. And that has led us to the place we are in life. For me, joining RNT was like rewriting the underlying script of my website. So it's like taking the code, erasing it all, and then with the help of you, Ivan, Ed, everyone else, the whole family to an extent, you've helped me rewrite my underlying script. I am a different person to who I was 2 years ago. Like the way I act, the way I try to, the way I process emotion, for example, the way I try to communicate with other people, my empathy, these are all things that have come from RNT and the weight loss journey, but it is basically because I have become a new person because of it. So when you sign up to RNT, you're not just losing weight, you're taking the inner essence of yourself, almost erasing it and then restarting it again. You're being reborn as a new person. So yeah, I've just written rewriting the underlying script is the last thing on my notes. So
I love it.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I've not heard that one before. I'm gonna have to steal that at some point. Fantastic. Amazing. If you're speaking to someone who's at the start of their journey right now and they're overwhelmed with the task ahead, potentially they're in the situation you were in 30 kilos ago, 2 years ago, what would you tell that person right now who's listening to you?
So I've got a couple of things. First is just trust RNT, trust the team, trust the coaches. If they tell you to do something, it's not because they want to make your life difficult. It's not because they think that you don't know anything or that they know better than you. It's just because they have the experience and they've done it, thousands of times realistically. So just trust them. And it's really easy to say you trust someone. To actually trust them, you have to basically do it. And the second thing that comes with that trust is consistency. So don't just do it today, but do it every day. And don't just do it every day for a week, do it every day for a month. Because after a month, you'll see a difference. And once you see the difference, it's addictive. But it takes that bit of time, faith, and consistency to see some change. And once you start seeing the change, you'll never look back.
Amazing. Any final words for the listeners, Sahil?
I think I just want to say thank you to yourself and Ed primarily. Ed he's like my best friend, my coach, my next of kin, my emergency contact, and my therapist all wrapped into one. I don't really understand how he does it. And I don't think I would be the person I am without him. So I think big thank you to him, but also to you for everything you've done with RNT. I think it's an incredible company that you've managed to create. And I'm just excited to see where it's going, especially with the new platform. But yeah, thank you to you guys both. Thank you to the rest of the team. And for anyone listening, if you haven't signed up yet and anything I've said has struck a chord, it probably means you want to sign up and book in a call, if nothing else, because there's no harm. If it then you say you want to turn away, then that's all good. But if you sign up, then you can join the family and maybe I'll see you at my shoot when I'm 30.
Amazing. Thanks so much for sharing your story and being so honest. Really appreciate it. And it's been a pleasure seeing your journey unravel. Like I said, the moment seeing you look at that camera the first time at the shoot, seeing your parents' reaction, the emotional reaction in your family gave me a stark reminder of why we do what we do every single day. And it makes the stories like yours and transformations like yours are the reason why we do what we do. So thank you for trusting in the process and just going with it, because like you said, the possibilities are endless, and seeing you unlock your potential in ways that we could never imagine a couple of years ago is what this is all about.
Yeah, well, thanks very much, and thanks for having me on the podcast as well. It was one of the dreams I had. When I was listening to the podcast 2 years ago, I was like, one day I'm going to do a shoot and I'm going to be on the podcast. So I've achieved both those things. So thanks very much.
Accomplished.